Give us your name and the title of your book. Actually, give us your name, your title, and the title of your book.
I'm Dr. W. Charles Lewis, and I'm the author of 28 Black History Makers in Dothan, Alabama.
And pastor?
Look a little bit more this way.
And I'm pastor of the Dothan Community Church here in Dothan.
Okay. Tell us about the book, 28 Black History Makers.
28 Black History Makers is a historical account of some of the foundational leaders here in Dothan, Alabama. There's a range of leaders from politicians to teachers to ministers to sports personalities, but they have had a great influence on the community here in Dothan and the Wiregrass.
How did you go about selecting 28? Because I know that was hard to do.
Well, I narrowed the number to 28 in keeping with Black History Month. So a personality for each day of the week for Black History Month. But to choose those 28, I interviewed a number of people who grew up in Dothan, who knew the people who influenced the community, whose legacies are continuing here today. So out of those interviews, there were names that were consistently listed, and from that pool, I chose 28.
Did you know any of them personally?
I did. I knew quite a few. Wallace Smith was my principal. I'm a native of Ashford, and Wallace Smith was the principal at Ashford High School. Well acquainted with Mr. Cooper, Mayor Cooper, who was the mayor of Enterprise. His mother taught at my elementary school in Ashford. Peggy James was at my elementary school. I wasn't a part of her award-winning choir, but I had a sister who was a part of her choir. It was a kids choir at Ashford, and she was the director and musician for that choir. And then there are a number of others. Dr. James Smith. I grew up. He would come to our church and preach, usually every year. So I knew him as well.
Was there any story or any person who influenced you the most?
Hold on 1 second, Deborah.
Okay. Was there any person who influenced you the most out of the 28?
The person who influenced me the most was my personal interaction with Mr. Wallace Smith. Again, he was my principal. When I was in elementary school, the high school.
Let's do that one again, okay?
Okay.
All right. Start and go.
The person who
No problem.
influenced, is that?
Yes.
The person who influenced me the most would be Mr. Wallace Smith, who was the principal at my school. When I was in elementary school, the high school was located on a different campus, but he would come and look at our work, and I remember him coming around looking at our handwriting. We were in 3rd grade, and he stopped and he looked at my handwriting, and he got my paper and held it up for the whole class to see. And he said my writing was the model of good handwriting. And a lot of people reference my penmanship today, and I'm thinking maybe what he said had an influence on me in continuing to practice and have a fairly legible handwriting.
Okay. How long did it take you to do the research for this book?
It took me about a year. And the
Okay, when you answer, say, okay, Deborah.
Okay, how long did it take you to do the research to put this book together?
Hold on. If you want to hold the book up
Okay.
and just say it took me, you know.
Yeah, I got what
it
you're
took me
saying.
about a year,
Mhm.
so, okay.
Okay, how long did it take for you to do the research to put your book together?
The research for 28 Black History Makers.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
okay.
How long did it take you to do the research to put your book together?
The research for 28 Black History Makers took about a year. People were very cooperative in providing what they knew. They told me stories, they sent me pictures, they sent me news articles. Some sat down and told me the backstory about a lot of the people. So it took about a year, and it was a year of learning for me.
Were there any surprising stories or something that stood out to you the most from the stories that you were told?
One of the things that stood out for me, something I was never aware of, was the role that Mr. Glennie Wiggins played in the history of Dothan in terms of getting blacks to be hired by the city of Dothan. He filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Dothan, and that opened a door for many blacks, even today, who are in position to come into position. So that was a pivotal thing that happened in our history that I wasn't aware of, and I was so glad that I found that out.
And I want you to probably open it up here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I noticed that you chose to use character photos versus the actual photos of the person. Is there any particular reason why?
I use the character photos instead of real pictures because in my research I came across a few people that either I didn't have a photo or it was old and not, you couldn't tell who it really was. So during my research also, I found another book that was doing some history on individuals, and they had character photos also. And I imagine that it's for the same reasons. Sometimes you just can't get a photo that a person can actually tell this is who this is. So we had a good artist who was able to look at a picture and draw it well, and you could tell that, yeah, that's that person.
See, I thought totally different. My thought process was that you used it for children to grab their attention. Okay.
All right. I'm rolling.
All right. So who influenced you the most in your coming up?
Of the 28 that are listed in the book, the one that had the most influence on my life personally was Mr. Wallace Smith, who was the principal of my school. I was able to somewhat grow with him. I was a student, and then when I moved back to the city, we actually became friends, and we interacted a lot. And I was over his home. He came to my home. We would visit each other, and his son Wallace Smith and I became very good friends. Got married the same year, and we still stay in contact with each other.
I think this is pretty much all the questions.
Okay.
I am W. Charles Lewis, and I'm the pastor of Dothan Community Church here in Dothan. I wrote the book 28 Black History Makers in 2022, and it debuted at the time of Juneteenth, a very fitting time for such a work.
If there was any one thing that stood out to you while you was writing this book, what would it be?
If there was one thing that stood out while I was writing the book, it was the richness of our history here in Dothan. I called to mind during that time something that Jesus said in the Bible, that a prophet is not without honor except in his own home and among his own people. So oftentimes the people in our community are as well educated and or as professional as people who are in large cities, but we often don't give them the credit and the recognition for what they've done because they are local and we know them. But that was one thing that stood out. We have some top-notch people in our community.
That's good. All right. If you, I just want you to sum up things in your own words, if you would.
About the book?
About the book, yeah.
28 Black History Makers looks at some key leaders in the Dothan community, and one should not shy away from the title, Black History Makers. It is not just for Black people. I have found that a lot of the individuals who are in the white community, other communities, have learned a lot from this. I had one person to call me to say that one of the persons in McLeod, for instance, taught her and had such an impact on her life. So it's not just for Black people, it's for the Dothan community to look at some of the leaders who influenced and had an impact in the community.